Trump White House scrambling now, late in the day, to quell another Epstein-related uproar. Now, there are reports that they're going to have this high-level meeting tonight, you might have heard about this, at the vice president's residence, which itself is a bit unusual, although you could have meetings in any number of places in the evening with top staff. What's different, though, is that the vice president now is trying to tamp down any expectations that this meeting is about Epstein or will lead to more Epstein action. He's denying that. Now, the reports called it a kind of an Epstein strategy dinner for the scandal that won't go away and to discuss if there is anything that they can release, including perhaps more information about the suspicious interviews conducted with Ghislaine Maxwell. This is what Vance just said.
Gathering of top advisors this evening to talk about how to respond to the Epstein situation.
I don't know. I could ask you that question. I don't know of it, but I think here's the man right here.
I saw it reported today, and it's completely fake news. We're not meeting to talk about the Epstein situation, and I think the reporter who reported it needs to get better sources.
Look, the whole thing is a hoax.
Donald Trump doing something very rare there, ceding the microphone, of course, because this is looking bad. So if by a bit of pre-planned theater, they have hung more of it on Vance, and then he says, oh, hey, why don't you answer? And then they both say fake news, and then you heard Trump at the end say this whole thing is a hoax. Well, this is a MAGA story from the start. This is something Trump promised to do, release Epstein information, which he's not doing. So just like the way he used to badmouth crypto as a scam and now sells crypto, we are reminded of the inconsistencies. If it's a hoax, it's his hoax. But the underlying case is no hoax. Real people, real lives were ruined. Real victims of sex trafficking have been speaking out because of the secrecy and the mistakes clearly made by the Trump administration now, even before you get to the history. And I've told you in this story, while there is politics involved and there's a whole saga in Washington about it, we will continue to make sure that we are covering the victims' families and the victims if and when they choose to speak out. And they're speaking out again today, saying we understand the vice president, again, based on that reporting, which you just heard him deny, but we understand he'll hold a strategy session with administration officials. Missing from this group is, of course, any survivor of the various crimes of convicted perjurer and sex trafficker Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. Their voices must be heard above all. They go on to say Maxwell should have remained in a maximum security prison and does not deserve the luxuries currently afforded her. A reference to one of the great hypocrisies about the so-called MAGA Epstein justice movement, which is if it has done one tangible thing, it's not get more information or transparency or get to the bottom of what was a suspicious death in the custody of the Trump DOJ. No, the one actual real-world change is better treatment and leniency for an Epstein sex trafficking conspirator. Washington Post reports, as for that leniency, that prison has comparatively comfortable accommodations. It's more like a campus, it's been described, than a typical federal prison. Indeed, one report said it's, quote, the nation's most lenient lockup. Another warden said, quote, someone gave preference, special preference to Maxwell. No other inmate currently in BOP has received, and it's a country club. Inmates, if they have a sex offense, are not going to a place like that, period. It's truly unheard of. Now there's overnight reports that Maxwell, in those interviews, and with all reporting, sometimes you ask, who would leak this? Who would have the reason to leak this? And who's in control of her and those interviews? Well, according to ABC News reporting, she told DOJ Trump never did anything concerning around her. Now, I'll put the ABC piece to the side and add another point here. What is going on when in a closed case where she's been convicted and her co-conspirator is dead, why is she being interviewed about Donald Trump in the first place? Why is his name even coming up? The whole thing itself is suspicious. And back before Trump was trying to get out from under this scandal, remember, there was an actual investigation. They already got all the information they could out of her. There is no legal or substantive reason we would expect new information to come out. The line of questioning and now the leaking is suspicious. Some say there could be a deal here. Now, I can only report for you what happened. I can tell you what's suspicious. I can tell you they already got information out of her before they convicted her. And I can tell you she's getting special treatment. Whether those were exchanged in a deal, we don't have the reporting on that yet. Trump, meanwhile, has dangled a pardon for her.
consider a pardon or a commutation for Ghislaine Maxwell if she's cooperating?
It's something I haven't thought about. It's really
If they
something.
recommended it,
It's something I'm allowed to do it, but it's something I have not
You're
thought
not, but you
about.
wouldn't.
I want to bring in our guests on something that Trump hasn't thought about but apparently can't rule out. We are joined by the Reverend Al Sharpton, host of Politics Nation on MSNBC, founder of the National Action Network, and Vanity Fair's Molly Jong-Fast, an MSNBC analyst. Molly, it sounds critical to just go in and list the sordid and unusual facts of what has occurred. No one in reporting has yet nailed a deal.
Right.
But we are seeing suspicious bricks in a wall that looks like Maxwell gave them stuff and now they're giving her stuff. Whether that was arranged, we can't say yet, but it doesn't look good.
It doesn't look good. And remember, this whole thing is, it doesn't look good. Like, every part of it doesn't look good. And every time Trump does more, he makes it worse, right? Like, he talks about it, he brings attention to it. Every piece of reporting, remember the reporting that the FBI had people go through and redact the names, including Trump's name? Like, these are just very suspect. These are things that seem very suspicious. And we haven't been able to thread the needle. But in a case like this, where there's so much attention and there's so much interest, to release more and more bits of it will just continue. And remember, I think what's important about this case is that it is something that gets the MAGA base is super interested in. It's not necessarily a mainstream media obsession the way that other things Trump has been involved in have been.
Yeah. Reverend Sharpton, I really want to go to the politics with you. You're known for more than one thing. You care a lot about civil rights. I want to ask you about that coming up. But you know politics. I've seen you maneuver with people in both parties. I've seen you counsel people who have scandals that look like a lot less than this. How do you rate the way they're handling this? And what do you think of what we just heard, the president and the vice president responding to their own sort of leaks? Only they know where they're meeting and who they're meeting with, and dragging out what has been their secretive approach to this sex trafficking scandal.
I think that at best, I'd rank them as amateurs because they're making very big mistakes. One, to have the number two man in justice go down and talk to a woman convicted, and then all of a sudden she magically leaves a jail and goes to what some have said is like a club. It just, amateurs do that. To talk about a pardon and leave it open, well, you're the lawyer, but pardon based on what? She's already been sentenced. Yeah. She's been sentenced before you were there. So what would be the basis of you saying she's been sentenced too long when she's been already doing the 20 years? What would be the basis of a pardon other than some quid pro quo for whatever reasons we don't know? I think that they have brought more suspicion on themselves because of the amateurist way they've handled this.
So I'm not minimizing the issues, and we've been covering, and I've had experts on about the victims. But I will make a Looney Tunes analogy, which is on other scandals, Donald Trump has been Wile E. Coyote. We have seen his critics and Democrats say they think they got him and he always gets away. Why do you think on this one, he suddenly is sitting in this for weeks on end with his base up in uproar?
Because this time it's not his critics getting him or his opposition getting him. He's getting himself. He's, there's a friend of mine that always says a fish wouldn't get caught if he kept his mouth shut. And he keeps talking himself back into this. And if he had just...
If I may, another friend of yours used to say that some people talk a lot, but say nothing.
Quote was talking loud and saying nothing.
Talking loud and saying nothing. Right. See, this is the thing. Sometimes people just listen to the lyrics. Rev says, no, I knew James Brown. Let me fix it for you. Go ahead, sir.
No, but what my point is, he has talked himself back into it. If they had not had to move with the Deputy Attorney General, if they had not had to move with Trump talking about this on a daily basis and denying it, it would have died that week. He keeps bringing it back, which also makes a lot of people feel that he can't let it go for a reason. Now, I don't know what he did.
Right, we don't know, but it looks bad.
But it looks bad.
Yeah, it looks bad.
Because you're complaining too much. You're spending too much.
Yeah.
And now you're going to have a meeting at the vice president's house, and it's the attorney general, head of the FBI, everybody that would be involved, but you're not talking about that. But then why did somebody leak that you were having the meeting?
Yeah.
Right.
What are you meeting about?
Exactly.
So, I mean, it's just amateur moves.
All right, Molly, maybe I'll do another James Brown,
Yes.
and maybe you can get involved. You ready?
Yes.
Okay, don't give it away.
All right.
I don't know karate.
This is not
But
prepared
I
for
know
this.
Careza.
I'm sorry.
There it is.
I apologize.
Classic.
Don't apologize. He's just an expert.
The
All right,
polling.
wait, I'm going to show you polling. It's funny you said that. We're on the
Okay.
same page. UMass poll. People are talking about this around the country.
Yeah.
It's summer. There's a lot of things going on. People are talking about this, and there's a clear view when you say who's hiding the info. It's not federal bureaucrats. It's not the speaker, although some think that. It's not the Trump officials who've been blamed, although Bondi does catch 59%. But far and away, this means, to be clear, Molly, 81% is over half of the people who voted for Trump statistically also think he's hiding it.
And if you poll the pardon, if you poll him pardoning Ghislaine, it's it's very hard to get Americans to agree on things, but they all agree that he should not pardon her.
The president held an impromptu press conference from a highly unusual location.
Sir, why are you on the roof?
That's nice. That's not a question you hear asked of a world leader that often. It's right up there with, Your Majesty, where are your pants?
Everyone was like, don't do it, sir. Your approval rating isn't that bad. We got
Well, I don't know. Hi, everybody. It's 5 o'clock in the East. Late Night House had a field day with something that was happening almost exactly 24 hours ago. Trump did some really bizarre rooftop wandering yesterday. Turns out Americans are getting tired of pretending there's nothing to see here, that it's all totally normal to have a world leader, president, wandering around the roof and shouting from it. A new Gallup poll finds that Donald Trump and his administration are deeply unpopular with Americans. A poll on Americans' views of world leaders, including the Pope, President Zelensky, Bernie Sanders, AOC, has Trump and his administration at the bottom of the pack, with Trump's approval rating at just 41%. It doesn't get better for Trump the more polls you look at. A new UMass Amherst poll has Trump's approval rating at a mere 38%, with 58% disapproving of his job performance, a 28% gap. According to that UMass poll, Trump is underwater in every single issue area that Americans say they care about. He gets 31% approval on his handling of inflation. Immigration, 41%, jobs, 37%, and just 31% of Americans approve of Trump's handling of his pet obsession of tariffs. If that doesn't shake or scare Trump and his allies, his support with men has plunged, helping to drive this drop in his poll numbers from 48% in April to just 39% right now. That is where we start the hour with some of our favorite experts and friends. Pollster and president of Brilliant Corners Research, MSNBC political analyst Cornell Belcher is here. Also joining us, voting rights attorney, founder of Democracy Docket, Mark Elias, who never gets to join us when we leave with Colbert and Fallon. Also joining us, former assistant U.S. attorney and president of the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, Maya Wiley is here, who doesn't get to join us on these topics either. I guess the point is, in starting this way, and I thank all of you for indulging me, is that I think we all agree that where we are isn't ideal. But if we're going to get out of it, we're not going to be let out of it by some, poll-tested perfect politician. We're going to have to lead ourselves out of it. And culture is so important. And so I wanted to start with Colbert and Fallon and just ask all of you what you think their role is in the national conversation. I'll start with you, Cornell.
Look, I think their role is vital, especially their ability to reach a cohort of Americans who aren't tuned in although they should, Nicole, be tuned into MSNBC every day, but they're not. Right? They're not watching. They're not watching us. They're not watching us every day. So their ability to speak to some of these cohorts of Americans who are not, and research shows that increasingly, especially after the election, a large swath of Americans just start tuning out of news, start tuning out of sort of public affairs because they're so disappointed what's happening. I think these are ways to reach them. And I think when you look at the polling data, clearly some of it is reaching them, right? When you look at his numbers, particularly among moderates and independent voters, right? Those voters in the middle of the road who are not sort of strongly partisan one way or the other. You know, where you see the most movement and drops in his numbers, Nicole, in that UMass poll, and shout out to the folks at UMass, they put out a really good product in their polling. You see there is where moderates and independent voters are pulling away, and his numbers are dropping the fastest on issues of the economy and even on the issues of immigration. And one thing on immigration is this, and Nicole, we talked about it before, it used to be a strong point of Republicans. And in UMass poll in April, he was above water 4 points on immigration. Today, he's now below water on immigration. So you've seen a 17-point swing in performance around his immigration. So even the pillars of what was once his brand are coming undone.
Well, I mean, Cornel, to be underwater 20 points in any poll is remarkable. I want to ask you about this swing of 10 points, 10-point drop in men. I was sort of late to the game and paying a lot of attention to the manosphere, to Joe Rogan and the other figures in the manosphere. I came around to recognizing their importance in the nick of time. Trump benefited enormously from the airtime and the association with figures like Joe Rogan and Andrew Schultz and Theo Vaughn and others. And I think knows it. I mean, I think Melania went on book tour and credited their son Barron with devising the strategy that delivered the White House to Donald Trump the second time. So I don't think that the Trump coalition would disagree at their import. But the first place where Trump was criticized for the disappearing of people in this country, foreign students, not people in this country illegally, but people on student visas, was Candace Owens and Joe Rogan. One of the harshest critiques of Donald Trump's practice of criticizing people at work, landscapers and construction workers, also came from Joe Rogan. I don't know if we're ready to say cause and effect, but the 10-point drop in men is a big flashing red light for Republicans in the midterms.
Well, it's a huge flashing red light, but also, you know, they help make him. And again, to my point about unconventional media sources, this is where the battle is going to have to be fought. And to a lot of my Democratic friends, right, this is where our resources and our people power are going to need to be moved, because they help make him. And we see sort of the drop in his base of support is happening because they are also turning against him. And that's a space. And again, when you started off the show with those cultural figures, Nicole, those cultural figures are, for better or worse, just as important, and in today's social media space, perhaps even more important than some of our news anchors.
Totally agree. Mark Elias, let me read a little bit more about this deterioration among men. Quote, Trump has cultivated a masculine reputation and sought to, this is from UMass. Trump has cultivated a masculine reputation and sought to build support among American men. But strikingly, we find that support for Trump has deteriorated most substantially among members of this group, says one UMass pollster. In April, Trump enjoyed approval from 48% of men, compared with 39% of women. Now only 39% of men express approval of Trump, compared with 35% of women. When I got to cultivated a masculine reputation, I had to make sure people know that I wasn't saying that. There's nothing about the whole look that reads masculine to me, but that's just me. Your thoughts on where he stands right now politically?
Yeah, look, I think that one of the most accurate and important statements about how voters process information actually comes from the right-wing Andrew Breitbart, who said that politics is downstream from culture. And by the way, Steve Bannon was an acolyte of Andrew Breitbart's and was very influential in building Trump's image. And very oftentimes Democrats think that the reason why the poll numbers are going up or down has to do primarily with policy. And I think that actually it, unfortunately, oftentimes has very little to do with policy. I think the fact is that Bill Clinton became very popular as much because he was viewed as cool as because of his policies. I think George W. Bush helped himself run successfully in 2020 because of the sense that he would restore honor and dignity to the Oval Office, which was a culture, not really a policy. I think Barack Obama, won 2 terms because he also was viewed as sort of a cultural figure and a cultural icon. And Donald Trump has benefited from that. Donald Trump has benefited from the sense that he is very, as you say, powerful, masculine, says things other people won't say, not a politician, whatever it is. But a lot of it is culture. And what has happened in the last few weeks and months is that that has taken a complete beating. I mean, I think that we are underestimating that for many Americans, the Epstein files is a very understandable thing. It's not how Medicaid is going to work. It's not what the jobs report data does and doesn't say or how it's calculated. It is very, very clear, which is that Donald Trump said that he was going to come to office and tackle all of the lies and all of the deep state and all of the hidden information. And the easiest proof point for that was releasing the files around Jeffrey Epstein. And every way in which he has handled the Epstein files has shown Americans that he is, in fact, not going to release the Epstein files because he's scared. He's not masculine, he's scared. He's not a protector of women. He's scared of what are in the Epstein files. And so, I think that we can look at how it impacts the individual issue set of immigration and economics. And again, I'm not diminishing those importance, but the reason why Colbert and Jon Stewart and others are so important is because they speak to the culture. And when they mock Donald Trump for walking around on the roof, what they are doing is they are signaling in the culture that this guy is just an old, fat man wandering around on a roof.
Up until today, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, was only allowed to hire agents under the age of 40. Today, Trump's Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem scrapped that rule.
We've removed any of the age barriers. We no longer have a cap on how old you can be.
ICE agents can now be as old as the day is long, it turns out. Come on down, Grandpa. They'll still take you. Doesn't matter how old you are. And at the same time, yesterday, 404 Media reported that ICE is also ramping up its effort to recruit young people. The agency is reportedly looking for a digital advertising company to, quote unquote, dominate digital media channels, targeting Gen Z via ads on social media and on streaming services like Hulu and HBO Max. They want old people, they want young people, they want anyone they can get, it seems. They've already seen ICE flood social media with recruitment ads like this one, quote, America needs you, join ICE now. Or this one, quote, want to deport illegals with your absolute boys? Go to joinice.gov. I'm clearly not the target audience for that in any way, shape, or form. Or this post, which says, quote, defend your culture, no undergraduate degree required. Phrase your culture is doing a lot of offensive work there in that old advertisement. ICE has even sent targeted emails to hundreds of local police officers and sheriff's deputies across the country, trying to poach them, angering local law enforcement leaders. As one Florida police chief put it to NBC News, quote, everybody's so pissed. The reality is that local law enforcement salaries can't compete. Thanks to more than $29 billion in funding for hiring and training for Trump's big, ugly bill, ICE is now offering up to $50,000 in a signing bonus to new recruits and up to $60,000 of student debt repayment. You could be 18, you could be 75, you don't need a college degree. They'll take you, you can hang out with your absolute boys and defend your culture. And they'll give you a big, fat bonus and pay off your student loans if you've got them. That is how ICE is hiring right now. The goal is to hire 10,000 more agents to supersize Trump's immigration crackdown. And while Trump is supersizing the part of our immigration system that arrests people, he is simultaneously shrinking the part of the system that gives those same people due process. While he is hiring ICE agents by the thousands, he is firing immigration judges by the dozens.
For Judge Dice, the axe came last Thursday in the form of a 3-sentence email. The Attorney General has decided to remove you from your position, the email stated. Your removal is effective today.
Since Trump took office in January, his administration has fired dozens of immigration judges without cause or reason with emails like that one. The immigration courts now only have about 600 immigration judges total nationwide to handle a backlog of about 3.5 million cases. That means that while the Trump administration is trying to arrest, imprison, and deport an unprecedented number of immigrants, there will be fewer and fewer immigration judges around to hear those immigrants' cases, to decide whether or not their arrests were lawful. Now, normally immigration judges can't comment on administration actions because of their jobs. But now that Trump has fired them, some immigration judges are starting to speak out. And I want you to hear how they're thinking about all of this.
What's at stake here?
It's really the future of our country. If the funding is going to enforcement and there's no justice left, that shows that our country is no longer embracing the need for due process and for justice.
If you're attacking the very judges that adjudicate cases, there's not going to be a rule of law. That should concern everybody, not just immigrants, but U.S. citizens.
Today is them, is immigrants. What about tomorrow? Who's going to get due process denied next?
Who's going to get due process denied next? It's quite a statement.
They don't have a right to see a judge.
Right.
They came here illegally. They came here illegally.
Excuse me?
So when the Japanese were bombing Pearl Harbor, did we give them due process to actually see a judge?
No, we put them in concentration camps.
They invaded our country.
We put them in concentration camps. Have you heard?
That was the lieutenant governor of Indiana earlier this week. And as you can see, the Trump administration's talking points about how invading immigrants do not deserve due process has quickly saturated the MAGA world. It's not where the majority of the public is, but certainly where the majority of some of the MAGA world is. That's deeply alarming, considering the tens of billions of dollars being now poured into immigration enforcement, courtesy of the big ugly bill. While at the same time, desperately needed officials like immigration judges are being culled. Joining me now is Jay Johnson. He served in multiple prominent roles during the Obama administration, including as the Secretary of Homeland Security, which, of course, oversees border security and enforcement of immigration laws. It is great to see you, and there's so much to ask you about. I just want to start by asking you about the influx of funding into ICE. And immigration enforcement. And this is certainly part of enforcement is part of what our country does under any president. But what we've seen as of late in the last several months, I mean, the arresting on the street of students, of parents, of people who are seeking asylum, of people some who are here legally, spouses of veterans. There's so many stories here. It seems to be in the pursuit of meeting this 3,000 a day quota. How concerned are you about that? And, of course, the massive influx of funding to ICE. It's almost like they don't know what to do with the money.
Exactly. First, I have to take exception with that clip you showed from the lieutenant governor. A migrant in the United States is not the equivalent of a wartime enemy. Let's be clear about that. Anytime there's a large plus-up of massive funding in a big hurry, you always have to worry as a taxpayer whether that money is going to be spent wisely. There are going to be a lot of private contractors with their hands out, not necessarily yielding to the best deal for the American taxpayer. And I'm not sure it makes sense to, for example, if you were in the midst of a war against drugs, you might hire a lot of DEA agents, you might hire a lot of cops, but you don't then also fire a lot of judges in order to hear the cases and sentence people to incarceration. So right now, the immigration backlog is years. It's millions of cases, backlog years. Very often, a migrant shows up to hear an asylum claim, to present an asylum claim. The judge hears it for 2 hours and then says, come back in 2027. So the answer is not lay off judges. If President Trump wants to see more deportations, wants to see the process move a lot faster, you don't create a huge backlog. I have to also add that this surge of hiring new ICE agents, anytime you draw a big net like that and try to bring on just anybody who wants to defend their culture, so to speak, you have to worry about exactly the character of the person you're bringing on. Big city police departments have made this mistake from time to time. Instead of hiring a dedicated, disciplined law enforcement officer, they're hiring the neighborhood badass. And that leads to a lot of real problems in the enforcement of the law.
I think that's exactly the concern with the incentivizing of $60,000 and student loan relief of what kind of people they might be pulling in and attracting to this. And to be clear, I have many issues with the lieutenant governor, too. I'm glad you called that out. That's an important thing to call out. Let me also ask you about, because one of the other pieces that we've seen about the immigration policies of this administration is this opening of detention centers. There's, of course, Alligator Alcatraz, which is a horrible name, opened up in the Florida Everglades. They're now touting the possibility of opening up another one in Indiana. There have been many reports about the inhumane conditions at the Florida facility and other facilities. You are not only used to oversee this department, you're also a very prominent lawyer. What questions do you have about what's happening in these facilities, and what should people be demanding answers on?
I'd be interested to know the demographics of the people who are in these facilities. Are we talking about single adult males? Are we talking about families? Are we talking about small children? What is the average stay in these facilities? What can one expect if you go there? What are the conditions like? A lot of these are stood up by private contractors. What kinds of guarantees do they make about cleanliness, about basic food and water? Anytime you surge like this, you have to be concerned about the conditions not being basically humane. And so, and no matter what happens, a number of people are still going to have to be released, because in a surge, you just don't have the type of detention capability that you would expect if you have thousands of people crossing in a day. The numbers are low right now, very obviously. So one questions the need for this large detention space. It seems to me what they're trying to do is send a deterrent to make it sound as ugly as possible. But in fact, the numbers are the lowest they've been in years right now crossing the southern border.
Okay, let's get right to the escalating fight over Republican-led redistricting efforts in Texas. Governor Greg Abbott filed an emergency petition yesterday with the Texas Supreme Court to remove State Representative Gene Wu, who is also the Texas House Democratic Caucus chair. The lawsuit claims Wu violated the state constitution and that his absence amounts to abandoning his office. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton says he will try to expel several House Democrats if they do not return to Austin by Friday. But the AG has already acknowledged that would be a lengthy process, requiring him to bring individual lawsuits in each member's district. Meanwhile, Senator John Cornyn of Texas, who will face Paxton in the Republican primary next year, has asked FBI Director Kash Patel to help Texas law enforcement locate or arrest the Democrats who have left the state. Senator Cornyn and Governor Abbott have both accused the lawmakers of accepting bribes to fund their trips out of Texas. So President Trump was asked yesterday about Senator Cornyn's request, and here's what he had to say.
Do you want the federal government and the FBI to help locate and arrest these Texas Democrats who have left the state?
Well, I think they've abandoned the state. Nobody's seen anything like it, even though they've done it twice before. And in a certain way, it almost looks like they've abandoned the state. It looks very bad. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Should the FBI get involved? Should the FBI get involved?
Well, they may have to. They may have to. No, I know they want them back. Not only the Attorney General, the governor wants them back. If you look, I mean, the governor of Texas is demanding they come back. So a lot of people are demanding they come back. You can't just sit it out. You have to go back. You have to fight it out. That's what elections are all about.
Well, a lot of Republicans actually want them back that want to rig the maps, but to get the FBI involved, I know John Cornyn's in a primary battle, but my God, talk about turning it up to 11 there, Johnny boy. It's like, it's crazy. People in this party think, and this is the thing that always, Willie, I find so I'll just say humorous. There's some dark humor to it. These people that are in power now, right? They overreach, and the overreaching is continuing. It's going crazy. It's something like getting the FBI involved. Do they really not understand what happens when the shoe's on the other foot? Do they really not understand breaking one Democratic norm after another, after another, after another? There may be a Democrat, there may be a progressive that is power hungry, that becomes president of the United States, and then has everything that this administration and this Congress is doing. And they say, well, look, they did it, so I can do it. And then they turn it up a little bit more. And then the other party gets in and they turn it up. It is so reckless and crazy. It's just sheer insanity, Willie.
Yeah, and you're seeing this debate now within the Republican Party about, within the Democratic Party about how far they should push back. Should we now engage in this tit for tat? Well, if you're going to do it, we're going to do it. The Democrats have been accused recently of not having fight, of not standing up to Donald Trump and Republicans, and a lot of them see this as a moment to do that. You got Senator Alyssa Slotkin of Michigan urging her fellow Democrats to take action to counter Republicans' push to redraw those maps in Texas. The first-term senator telling NBC News, Democrats have to fight fire with fire. Here's what she said.
I'm going to urge and encourage blue states like a California or a Chicago or a Illinois, to do the same thing. I don't want to do that. I want the country to have a completely nonpartisan drawing of the lines based on the census. But if they're going to do that and go nuclear, so am I.
Senator's comments came as California Democrats now move to counter the Republican redistricting effort in Texas with discussions on their own of a new political map that would help the party pick up as many as 5 of the state's Republican House seats next year, effectively doing what Republicans are doing in Texas. The state's Democratic members of Congress and the legislature have been briefed in recent days, with lawmakers planning a vote on the proposal the week of August 18th. California Governor Gavin Newsom says he hopes to put a new map in front of voters in a special election on November 4th. So, Charlie Sykes, this is the reaction, but let's talk about the action, which is what Republicans are doing in Texas. We'll point out again, as we always do, these maps usually redrawn at the end of a decade after the census based on population, not based on political whims.
Right. Well, and there's nothing subtle about it. I mean, Donald Trump said that out loud yesterday that we're entitled to 5 extra seats. But I mean, look at the vortex of escalation that we're in right now. The cycle. The whole point of mutual assured destruction was to deter extreme measures. But what happens if it doesn't deter? Then you get the nuclear option. Then you get the destruction. And so Democrats, I think, have come to a consensus very, very quickly that they are not simply going to stand aside and wring their hands and say, we're going to, take the moral high ground, because, quite frankly, the alternative is electoral annihilation. So what we have, and then the New York Times described this the other day, we are in a period of maximum political warfare. And the consequences, look, are going to be, long lasting. But unfortunately, this is the kind of cycle that you get into when you have someone like Donald Trump asking that all the norms be trashed, when asking that one rule after another be thrown away. So sooner or later you get this nuclear option. But what comes after the nuclear option? Nuclear winner. Not good for democracy. Not good for the electoral system. But what alternative do they have at this point if, in fact, this is the way they're going to go in Texas?
Again, the stupidity of this, all you have to do is look at history. We've talked about this time and time again. Just look this century, and see how it's bounced back and forth. I got to run through it again really quickly. 2004, George W. Bush wins. Karl Rove's talking about a permanent Republican majority. 2006, Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House. 2008, Barack Obama wins a massive landslide, and everybody's talking about a new generation of politics. Republicans are going to be thrown out forever. 2 years later, the Tea Party takes over. They come and say, people have spoken, we're in charge now forever. 2 years later, Barack Obama wins. 2 years later, in 2014, Republicans have one of their biggest years later. Donald Trump wins in 2016. And people go, oh, this is changing the landscape forever. 2018, who's Speaker? Nancy Pelosi becomes Speaker as the Democrats have big off-year elections. And then Biden wins in 2020, and then we have Donald Trump again. But again, they're turning it up to 11. They're going, by the way, Spinal Tap 2 coming out soon in theaters near you. They turn it up to 11. And so what happens? Jim Vandehei, we've been through this so many times. The American people are between the 40-yard lines. They just are. And right-wing freaks and left-wing freaks can't change the fact that the American people are between the 40-yard lines. They care about affordability. They care about inflation. They care about, there's a Wall Street Journal page, Wall Street Journal story. Many are earning more, but are in worse financial shape. I mean, the underlying economic ills are not being treated. And people, these Republicans are running around, and what are they doing with their power? They're subpoenaing a president from, who hasn't been in office for a quarter of a century. They're trying to play political gamesmanship in Texas and get the FBI involved. Like, this turns off voters. It's why there are a lot of generic ballot polls that are showing Democrats moving far ahead of Republicans. It's like you and I were there when, 25 years ago when Republicans still talked to Democrats. Yeah, we fought, but I always was very conservative, but I always sit with Democrats. Had friends on the other side. It's gotten crazy now. And to what end? There's not going to be total victory. There's not going to be an absolute surrender. I mean, you look at this poll on who would you vote for today? The Economist YouGov. Democrats are now 5 points up over Republicans, and that's a jump of about 3 points. And in large part because Republicans are being so extreme. Why don't they govern to help people who are struggling?
I would take it a step further. I think that if you're using the football field analogy, I think most Americans are within the 25-yard lines. Like 70% of people are really normal. They're not that engaged in politics. The problem is the power in politics sits outside that 25%. You look at Trump and his base. It's not half of the country. It's about half of the Republican Party, and that is the dominant theology. And I think maximalist politics, maximalist power is a good way to describe it. Well, every action begets an opposite, equal, and often overreaction in politics. So if you're a Democrat, you look like a chump if you don't do unto them as they're doing unto you. If they're going to redistrict in Texas and you want to run for president, of course Gavin Newsom's going to say, let's do the same in California. Of course you're going to say, let's do the same thing in Illinois because you control the mechanics of politics there. Of course, if you're a Democratic senator in Michigan with ambitions, you're going to say, listen, we've got to fight fire with fire. And the problem is with redistricting, which is at the root of this polarization. If you want to reverse engineer all of the problems in politics, it's because at the state level, that's how you control and write these different districts. You end up with these gerrymandered things to benefit the party in power. So you end up with a much more ideological political system than you would have if you just kind of dispersed it based on the general population. And so this is not surprising. This is like the messy ugliness of democracy and the federal system. But you're right, now taking it from a 10-year period, moving it down to a 5-year period, playing politics in the middle of it because you're worried that you're going to lose the House. And I do think all of this is motivated by that poll that you put up there. There's almost no Republican I'm talking to that doesn't think that they probably will lose the House in the next election for all the reasons that, Joe, that you just talked about. It's just how politics works. Like, add another stat to what you were saying. Every president going back to Clinton has had 2 years of full power in Washington, meaning you had the House, the Senate, and the presidency. Think about the hubris to assume that's not going to happen, and then think about the ignorance to think that they're not going to do it to you, right? That is the sad part of all this.